Jack was a career criminal. He made a small fortune for himself, committing different crimes over the years, and he was very good at going undetected. He was never caught for any crime he committed. If he wrote a book about how he did it, it would be a bestseller with criminals. Jack lived in a mansion in the Hamptons and used to love to chill out by the swimming pool with a cocktail and enjoy the high life his crime allowed him. He loved to think of the saying, "crime pays," and he added to it, especially when you're a smooth criminal like himself. He felt like going for a road trip one day, so decided to take a trip across the country. He felt like going on a journey with no destination, just drive and enjoy the scenery, so that's exactly what he did. He drove and drove, stopping at motels now and then, and there were times he drove from daytime all through the night. He snorted lots of cocaine to stay awake. He ended up in this small town, which only seemed to have a diner, bank, post office, and another handful of shops. He decided the bank was an easy target, so made up his mind he was going to rob it. When he was in the room in the motel, he saw a flyer that said, "Give blood to the blood bank. Call 1-800-BLOOD BANK now." He thought back to when he was younger, before his life of crime. One of the ways he made money was give blood, and he would get payment for his blood. He'd realised it was a very good thing to do, helping people. When he finally entered the bank wearing a mask, he held the gun to the girl behind the counter and shouted, "Hold up your hands and give me the money." The girl got a fright and held up her hands in panic. After a few minutes, the girl passed over loads of money in bags, and Jack left the bank and jumped in his car. He decided to not bother go back to the diner. It wasn't worth the risk of getting caught, so he just drove out of town. But before he could even get halfway down the road, he saw a very strange sight. There were lots of pale women in black dresses in a line all across the road. He stopped the car. He got out and shouted, "What the hell is this? I'm trying to drive on the road." One of the women pointed towards him and said, "You must have seen the flyer, which said give blood to the blood bank. That is a sort of cryptic message to our coven. You see, we are witches, and we have a witches' coven. And that bank is where we fund our coven. And you have taken all our money, so it's not a case of you giving blood. It's a case of us spilling your blood." With that, all the women walked towards Jack, and with knives started cutting into him until his blood poured out of his lifeless body, which lay dead on the ground. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Sarah was just after sneaking into a kitchen of a stranger's house while a man was sitting down drinking his coffee. She had it all planned for a few days. What time he would be at home, was there any nosy neighbours on the lookout for something strange, etc. She went up behind him with a knife and slit his neck. Instantly he fell to the floor. She was looking forward to later, as she was going to see a play. A few hours later, she was admiring her dress she had chosen to wear to the play. On her way to the theatre, she was smiling, looking forward to her next victim. She didn't need a reason to kill. It could be a person she knew all her life, or a complete stranger. Either way, it wouldn't play on her conscience. She would just enjoy the kill and the feeling it gave her. It was like it made her whole again. When she got to the theatre, she took her seat and was looking forward to the play. She heard about it from a friend who saw it a few years ago in a different state. It was a play about a man and woman running away to get married. Very light and very romantic, just what she needed. When the curtain opened, she saw a table and a man sitting at it. She got comfortable in her seat looking forward to it. Then a woman came onto the stage, sneaking behind the man. First, Sarah didn't take any notice of what was happening, but when the girl took out a knife, she was shocked at what she was seeing. It was like a play of exactly what she did a few hours before. Suddenly the man next to her put handcuffs around her hand and said to her, "Looks familiar. You were under arrest for the murder of someone you neglected to find out had CCTV all over their home. I'm sorry, but it looks like you're going to miss the play." The first thing the woman said was, "It was not me. It must have been my twin sister." Then the cop said, "Well, why do you think we went to all the trouble of doing this scene in the play? I'll tell you why. To get your reaction for proof that it was you." Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Teresa was worried about her sister Judy. Judy was arrested several times in the last few months and recently was put on house arrest. She was pleased that her sister was at home and knew that all her friends were forbidden to call to see her. She knew that Judy hated being in the house the whole time, but also was happy that she wouldn't find herself get into any trouble by being able to go outside. Teresa was walking around her local park when she had noticed there was a trailer with a psychic in it. She wondered what a psychic would be like and knew she didn't believe in them, but she needed a distraction, so she went into the trailer. She hoped she was free to see her, and she was. A few minutes later, Teresa realized that the psychic had just confirmed she was a charlatan when she had been making no sense about her sister killing people today that were working in a restaurant. Teresa was smiling inwardly, knowing how could she kill anyone that works in a restaurant when she can't even go outside her door. Teresa tried to look as interested as she could, and she was actually enjoying the whole entertainment of it. The novelty value wore off fast when she had to pay the charlatan $20. She was cursing herself walking home, knowing she could have went to a great movie in the cinema and had a meal with her $20 that she spent on that damn charlatan. When Teresa got home, she noticed something looked wrong. Her door was open. She knew that her sister wouldn't have gone out. She hated prison and wouldn't risk that. As Teresa got nearer, she screamed as she saw 4 different delivery drivers dead just outside the door. Judy was standing inside the door in a daze. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. I met a really nice guy called Jeff in the resort I went on holidays with my friends to. I loved to just lie down and relax and feel the peaceful atmosphere all around me. I loved how the island looked when I looked it up online, but somehow it even exceeded my expectation. We were enjoying our time during the day because he was working nights, then had to get to sleep for a few hours. We were really enjoying the sun, so it was kinda cool him having the day off. He looked so cool and had blonde hair and wore sunglasses. My friends Sarah and Judy went off with other guys they met, so it was just as well I met Jeff, or I'd be on my own in this resort. I actually wouldn't mind, only for there being a serial killer breaking into people's apartments and murdering them in their sleep. One girl survived and told the police that he was wearing all black and some sort of ski mask or scarf or something, but she noticed something very strange about his eyes. The police wondered, did he wear contact lenses, or for some strange reason was that really the colour of his eyes? They couldn't even draw up a sketch of the serial killer, as all they had to go on was he had strange red eyes. Me and Jeff didn't let a serial killer loose on the island ruin our fun, so we continued to have as much fun as we could, including surfing. It was so beautiful, feeling the breeze while going along the water on the surfboard. When we got back, I was watching the evening news. It was about the killer. I went to fetch a towel from the shower and accidentally walked in on Jeff. He froze when he saw me and looked right at me with eyes that were the colour red. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content. Martin was shocked when he overheard his sister Mary talking about looking forward to win a tennis tournament. He first thought it was fixed, but when he overheard a conversation with her new weird boyfriend, he was shocked and couldn't believe what he heard. He often heard of different conspiracies, like people in high-paid jobs and very high positions sold their soul to the devil, Illuminati, and all different types of different conspiracies. But when he heard his sister say she was really looking forward to play, knowing she would definitely win and become a champion, it really made him stand up and listen and wonder, how did she know she was going to win? He froze behind the door. She said, "I'm really looking forward to win the tournament. I worked so hard to win anyway, so it doesn't matter that we're using the help of Satan. Anyway, Satan will appreciate us using his help." Her boyfriend Jack said, "Satan will really appreciate you doing this, and believe me, that boxer you saw win a world title the other night, I'm not saying he would have won it without the help of Satan, but he paid great respect to him by letting his power help him." Martin couldn't understand what he was hearing. He wanted to ask his sister, what in the name of God were they talking about? It all seemed so weird and, well, obviously satanic. Martin always was afraid of anything to do with the occult, and it really sent shivers up his spine to think that his own sister, who was sleeping under the same roof as him, could be a Satanist. A few days passed and he had the opportunity to listen to his sister and boyfriend speak again. This time they mentioned a special room in a huge house that her boyfriend lived in. Martin knew that he had to see that room, so he planned and eventually made his way in there. It was a hard plan to come up with and took an awful lot of work, but he did it, and he did it well, and that is the reason why he was able to get inside the room. But when he got in there, it was just an empty room with some sort of table or altar in the front. He heard noise, so quickly hid under the cloth covering the table. He heard voices talking about people getting into positions near the altar, and then they find themselves in that position in real life. By the conversation, he learned that is how the boxer became a champion, how his sister won the tennis championship. They just needed toy trophies or whatever to use, and whatever position they made near the altar, that is the position they would soon find themselves in real life. He wanted to get out of the room fast, but suddenly he heard a man say, "I'll guard the room tonight." Martin froze in fear, knowing that he could not escape the room tonight. He could not believe that this altar is how they got their positions of power, all those people his sister was talking about. He tried to go to sleep, so just lay down on his back and rested his hands on his stomach. He eventually fell asleep. A few days later he was lying in the same position. It was lying in the coffin position. In a coffin. Dead. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Leah was so envious of her friends because they were able to go to rock and roll concerts every weekend. Rock and roll was really taking off in her town, but her dad was a pastor and said it was the music of the devil. If he had his way, he would ban the music altogether. She just knew her dad didn't understand the music and wish he could feel it like she did. She didn't just listen to the music, she felt the music. Her friends used to tell her of great rock and roll shows they used to go to and explain how great the guitarists were and so much more. Leah used to have a pen pal where they used to exchange photos of Elvis Presley, etc. But her dad happened to come across one of her letters and got mad and grounded her for a whole week. He didn't want her to do anything that had anything to do with rock and roll. When she was in her bedroom, she was so angry at her dad for not letting her enjoy the amazing music which rock and roll was. One summer day, her friends were walking in the beach and they came across a caravan where there was a fortune teller called Mystic Marie. Leah decided to go in. She knew her dad would definitely disapprove, as he said any power humans have for telling the future, etc., doesn't come from God, but the devil. Marie said as soon as Leah sat down, "Something is bothering you. Please tell me what it is." Leah began to start at the start and tell her that her father stops her from listening to rock and roll and going to rock and roll concerts, and she just wishes he could feel rock and roll, really feel it and its effects. She loved the effect it had on her. Marie promised her she would grant her wish. The next weekend, Leah had decided to sneak out to a rock and roll concert, and she had so much fun. Her dad must have had a premonition she would do it, because he had noticed she had snuck out. He went out looking for her, and as he was walking by a cliff, he heard a noise. He turned around to see what it was, and saw a huge rock roll towards him. He screamed as the rock hit him and pushed him off the cliff to his death. When Leah found out what had happened, she felt so guilty and blamed herself, and instantly hated the words rock and roll. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Susan had a very real fear against fire, and it started when she went out for a few groceries a year ago and left her washing machine on. She never even thought that it could catch on fire. When she came back from doing her groceries, she was shocked to the core when she saw that her house was on fire, and the fire was so bad she had to use her insurance money to buy another house. She promised herself that she would never ever leave on any appliance ever again overnight when she left her house, or when she wasn't looking at it to see was everything okay. She plugged out the TV, radio, washing machine and dryer. She switched the oven off. She didn't smoke, so didn't have that worry at least. All Susan's life, she felt tiny feelings that afterwards explained themselves. For instance, she once was on her way to school when she was 8, and she felt a strange dizziness. She didn't tell anyone, but that day in school, her friends spun her around, fooling, and when she finally stood on her own, she felt dizzy. Before the fire had happened in her house, Susan had felt very hot. She never even guessed it was because there would have been a fire about to engulf her whole home. It was one night Susan felt a strange feeling. She felt hot, but also felt cold. Most people would say it was just a fever, and she hoped that that was all it was, a simple fever. She made sure to plug out the appliances, TV, washing machine, etc., as always. She lay in bed worried. Was her feverish hot and cold feeling a warning that there will be another fire in her house? She eventually fell asleep. She was dreaming about a fire brigade, and there was a fire alarm blending in with the siren until she realized she was awake and her fire alarm was ringing. She panicked and jumped out of bed, and when she opened her door, smoke spread all around her fast. She rushed downstairs and wondered how anything could have went on fire. When she plugged out everything, she froze in fright when she saw her fridge had caught on fire, and knew now that was the one appliance she couldn't plug out, because how could she? No one would. She rang the fire brigade, and thankfully they arrived and put the fire out before it did any real damage. But her biggest fear was, what would she do about the fridge, and how could she turn it off without spoiling her food? She would never be able to sleep easy knowing her fridge was plugged in. That was the one appliance she never, ever guessed would be the one she had to plug out. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Patty was exhausted from a long list of job interviews she had to conduct today. She sat down relaxing, watching TV with a cup of coffee. She wondered was it a mistake having a cup of coffee, as it would more than likely keep her awake all night. She needed something to calm her nerves anyway, as her day was hectic, so she decided to enjoy her cup. Suddenly her cell phone rang. It was a private number, which she usually never answered, but something told her to answer the phone. When she did, she heard a familiar voice. "Hello, Patty," a woman said. Patty said, "Hello, who is this?" The woman said, "Patty, this is going to come as a shock to you, but you are in grave danger. Please don't say anything for a minute. I am your future self. You're in grave danger because I am speaking to you from the other side. I can't show you myself because if you see yourself dead, it will affect a lot of different things. You need to look in your attic right now. There is a ladder in the hall that you were using to paint the hall. Now what I need you to do to stay safe is climb that ladder, look to see is there a device like a bomb in your attic, and trust me, it will be there. It should be detonated in 5 minutes, but I'll tell you how to safely dispose of the bomb. Don't worry. Don't try to get out of your house, because the house is rigged. If you try to leave by window or door, it will activate the bomb. Please don't waste any more time. Do it now." Patty was in shock when the person hung up. She wondered. Well, she knew it had to be some sort of prank. How could her future self be talking to her? But just in case there was something to it, because she did have an open mind, she got the ladder and put it under her attic. She climbed the ladder and put on the light and took a look around. She got a shock when she saw in front of her the person she refused an impersonation job for, a new show on the local TV channel. The person put a rope around her neck and said, "You bitch, you should have given me that job." Then as the rope was around Patty's neck, she was pushed down. She then hung from the rope while the woman placed a typed suicide note on the ground next to her body. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Tracy was 8 years old and had a habit of burying things in the garden. Her mom didn't really mind, as she used to remember when she was her age. She used to think she could dig to Australia, since it was cold down under. One night it was a doll she buried. The next night it was a teddy bear she buried. and it really upset her mom one night when it was a stray cat she was burying. Jackie, her mom, screamed when she saw the dead stray cat and asked Tracy where did she get it. Tracy said the devil told her to bury it. Jackie was very concerned and knew that Tracy had to be seen by a therapist. Jackie tried to find out, did Tracy find the cat or actually kill it herself? Tracy went through months and months of therapy, and thankfully she didn't bury anything else until one night. Jackie saw Tracy dig a hole, and she was amazed at how big the hole was. She said to Tracy, "Sweetie, you know you're not meant to bury anything anymore," Tracy said. "I know, Mother, but this is the very last thing I will ever bury." Jackie asked her what it was. Tracy pulled out a gun and said, "You, Mother." Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. It was summer in New Orleans when a pastor found out about a mysterious voodoo cult. He was sent an anonymous letter saying that the doom and evil would fall among their town if something wasn't done, and it had to be done from a man of faith. He was told there would be dolls hanging up around somewhere in the town. It needed to be ended by a man of faith. It needed to be a case that a man of faith cut the dolls down. He was shocked reading the letter, but a part of him was just dismissing it, thinking it must be some teenagers with nothing else better to do with their time than write a letter to the local pastor. But all of his skepticism changed in the next few days, when he was going for a walk in the woods, and he had seen lots of dolls hanging off trees. He didn't like the look of it, and put it down to some voodoo or black magic ritual. He came back a while later with his scissors, and cut them all down. He counted them individually, and there were 13 dolls exactly. He went home and was in shock while listening to the radio when the newsreader said, "There has been 13 people in a local New Orleans town, Glenside, found dead under mysterious circumstances. It is not known yet what is the cause of the deaths, but the local police are looking for any witnesses or dashcam footage of any of the scenes. There were in various parts of the town. We will keep you updated on this story as more information comes into us." A few minutes later, he walked into his son's room, and his son was playing a computer game. It looked to be one of those violent games. The screen said, "Now cut the doll from the string it's hanging on in the ceiling and you will win the game." The son had just cut it before his dad walked in the room, and before his dad could get mad at him for playing another violent game, his dad dropped dead. The son screamed and ran over to his dad, not knowing that the so-called online game he was playing led to the death of his father. When the pastor cut the 13 dolls down, it had to be his own flesh and blood cut another doll down to the pastor be the 14th death. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. There were 4 random strangers chosen to share in a prize of $100,000 if any one of them solved the puzzle. It started with a simple phone call. Sarah was in her office when she got the call. "Hello, this is a genuine request. You're under no obligation to say yes, but you and 3 other people are invited to take part in a puzzle. If you or any of the rest of the participants solve the puzzle, ye will all share in the prize of $100,000. That's giving ye all exactly $25,000 each. That is a nice payback for just a few minutes' work. If you would like to participate, then all you have to do is arrive at Madison Hotel on Grove Street at 6 p.m. this evening. There is an elevator on the ground floor. Just wait outside that elevator for the door to open. Then please enter with the rest of the participants. You will all know that ye are there for the puzzle, don't worry." The same phone call arrived for Jack, who was in the gym working out. Tony got his call while out walking, and Mary got her call while watching TV. They all agreed to take part in the puzzle. That evening at 6 p.m, they were all waiting outside the elevator, waiting for it to open, excited with the chance of pocketing $25,000 each if any of them solved the puzzle. Suddenly the elevator doors opened, and they all stepped inside. The elevator started going up, and a voice came through the speaker. "Hello, player. Thank you very much for taking part in this puzzle that enables you to have a chance of winning $25,000 each. The question to the puzzle is simple. The floors of this hotel have various occupants at different times. Sometimes, but other times not as much. But what button in this elevator is pressed the most? If you can't answer by the time we reach the top floor, you will be shown the answer on the display in the elevator, but unfortunately you will lose out in the money. This is the most important rule. If you give a wrong answer, you will all lose the game. Good luck." The elevator started going up to the top floor. Everyone started talking about it, trying to solve the puzzle. It sounded so complicated, especially when there were different numbers of people staying in different floors at different times. Everyone knew there was 15 floors in the hotel, so Sarah shouted first floor before it hit 15. They all hoped the answer was right. Then suddenly the voice came back and said, "I am very sorry. You were very close, but the answer is ground floor, because everyone has to go to the ground floor. As promised, we will show you the answer, which is everyone has to go to the ground floor." Suddenly the elevator made a bang and started falling faster and faster, and everyone in it started screaming until it crashed to the floor, and they were all killed. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Michael was waiting in the waiting room at his local optician's. when a girl approached him and said to him, "Hello, Michael. Here is a sheet you need to fill out, and your eye test will be $30. And if you would like a full 3D scan of your eye to see will there be any problems for you within the next 4 years with your eyesight, then it will be another $25. So you can tick the box if you'd like to have the scan as well as the eye test, and someone will be down to see you for your eye test very soon. Thank you." Michael thanked the girl and filled out the sheet. He decided to get the scan done, considering it a very good idea to know if he will have any problems with his eyes down the road. And 4 years is a very good time range to know beforehand. When Michael entered the room, he was told to rest his chin on a chin rest and look through 2 holes while a girl introduced herself as Sarah. She asked him various questions, which colour was better for him, red or green, and the test went on a few minutes. It ended with Michael having to read out different letters from different lines. Sarah asked, "Could you read the top 3 lines please, Michael?" Michael said, "E, F, P, T, O, Z. Sarah said, "Very good. Now could you please read the 4th line?" He read them, L, P, E, D. Very good. Now if you could read the last few lines please, but it will be getting a bit harder. Michael was pleased to be able to read them. P, E, C, F, D, E, D, F, L, O, P, Z, D, D, E, F, P, O, T, E, C, L, E, F, O, D, P, C, T. Then it came to the scan. Michael was asked to put his eyes on the chin rest again. While his eyes were being scanned, Sarah was looking at her screen, afterwards explaining to Michael that everything with his eyes was in great health and he just had to get a bit stronger prescription for his glasses. Michael chose a red pair of glasses and was very happy everything seemed okay. That night when he got home, it started first. He kept getting a vision of some man in a black suit shooting him. He found out by the opticians they had no person by the name of Sarah working in the opticians. He put it down to the eye test why he was getting these crazy visions. The visions went on for months and months of the man shooting him. One night when he was walking, he got such a fright as the man who was in his visions who shot him was walking towards him. Michael panicked when he saw the man put his hand in his pocket, guessing it was a gun to shoot him. So Michael couldn't think of anything else but to push the man into a car that was just passing. The man lied on the street, and before he died he said to Michael, "I just wanted to give you back your wallet you dropped." A week later, Michael was arrested for murder and realised that it wasn't only the optician could see what happened to his eyes the next 4 years, but he could see what happened to him. But he couldn't figure out, why did the man only want to give him back his wallet when he had visions that he was going to kill him? He'd only wanted to give him back his wallet. That's what Michael could not figure out. Suddenly, when he was walking out of court, being convicted of murder, a man exactly like the man he killed walked up to him and pulled out a gun and said, "You bastard, you killed my twin brother," and he shot Michael between his eyes. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Mandy was an inspiring writer who had an agent with interest in a manuscript she had wrote. The manuscript showed potential, but wasn't publishing worthy, were her agent's words. Mandy felt a surge of excitement at the very fact her agent was ready and willing to give her a chance. But her agent stressed that she would have to come up with a whole new manuscript that proved she was a writer that had the talent to write a novel that had the potential to be a bestseller. Mandy was a carer to a very ill world-famous writer. His name was Arnold Starr. He had a string of best-selling novels, and lots of them were turned into movies. Arnold kept telling Mandy that he had his best work hidden away, and only she knew about it, but asked her to give the manuscript to his agent in the event of him dying. He gave her a key code to get into the room that the manuscript was hidden in, and he promised her that no one knew about the manuscript, not even his agent. One summer evening, Arnold passed away peacefully in his bed. Mandy had did exactly what Arnold had asked of her, and put in the code and retrieved his manuscript. She was about to call his agent when a crazy idea entered her head. What if she kept the manuscript and gave it to her agent? That night in her own home, she rang her agent and said, "Hi, I have great news. I'm finished my manuscript and I am so happy with it. I took your advice and tried my best to prove to you that you're right, that I have the talent to write a potential bestseller." After the call, Mandy settled down with a glass of wine and read the manuscript. It was exciting and gripping from the opening line. On the last page, she was surprised as she read, "There was a spirit in the house of a girl called Mandy. They wanted revenge for a wrong she did, to get even from something she took belonged to them. Mandy thought she heard a noise in her stairs, but as frightened as she was by feeling a cold sting in the air and what she had just read, she felt forced to read on, so she did. The words staring up at her were, "The noise stopped in the stairs, and the spirit knocked on the door." Suddenly the door swung open, and Mandy was shocked to see Arnold standing right at the door. He looked right at her, and his stare made her drop dead. His spirit disappeared. A few days later, Mandy's agent found the manuscript, and about a year later it was published as Mandy's first and only book, and it went on to become a #1 bestseller, which was always Mandy's dream. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Ben was relaxing watching TV when he decided to scroll through his phone and was shocked when he saw photos of himself posing with what looked like a dead body in his room. He scrolled through some more photos of him, smiling near a dead body. He not only didn't remember any of these photos being taken, but the only dead body he ever saw was of his grandfather years ago. He froze in shock and didn't know what to do. Suddenly he heard a siren outside his house, and there was a knock at the door. He answered to 2 police officers. 5 minutes later, they arrested Ben in his bedroom where the body that was in the photograph was taken. Ben was in shock, trying to explain to the police officers he didn't kill anyone and he didn't know how those photos were taken, and said they must have been photoshopped. A week later, experts analysed them and were confident the photos weren't doctored in any way. When Ben was in prison, he tried to comprehend what happened. 100 miles away, Jake, his twin brother, that he never knew he had, was writing in his diary. Finally, I got my own back on my twin brother, who didn't even know I existed. He had it all, a big house, parents, and a great upbringing, while I was bouncing from foster parents to foster parents, and most of them were drunk. Finally, Ben couldn't take it anymore and hung himself in his cell. At that exact moment, Jake felt a moment of peace and calm. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Susan was looking through old papers and documents in her family home that was standing for over 300 years. She didn't remember her parents that much because they were killed in a freak accident in their garden. She didn't know the details. She had photos of them, and that is all she remembered. She was reading through different documents when she came to a certain one that grabbed her attention instantly. It read, "I put the treasure in the garden for safekeeping." It was signed by her mom. She noticed the date in the diary entry was exactly the same day her mom had her accident. She wondered, was she murdered for the treasure? This kept bothering Susan more and more. When she was out walking, she kept thinking, were her parents murdered for whatever was buried in her garden? She thought all through the years that her parents were in some sort of freak accident, and now she is worried that it was plain, old-fashioned murder. A week later, she had enough of wondering and just had to go out to the garden to dig up the treasure. There was a page that had the exact position of the garden where it would be. She had a pitchfork and shovel and dug until eventually she hit a hard piece of what she guessed was wood. Sure enough, it was a chest, and when she opened it, she smiled, seeing that it was full of what looked like priceless gold and jewels. She came across photos that made her nearly get sick, as there were photos of her parents and what she guessed were her grandparents, with some sort of spike in their eye. She suddenly heard a noise, and her leg slipped, and she fell on the fork, which gouged right into her eye. She screamed, realizing that the spikes in the fork were what were in her parents' and grandparents' eyes. She fell into the hole and screamed when she saw what looked like a white ghost hovering over her, and within seconds she realized there were bones near her, and seconds later she was buried alive. The spirit was of Mason Jeffers, the estranged son who was cut out of his inheritance over 250 years ago. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Sam was working in a pet shop to face his fears. The reason he had a fear of birds was when he grew up in his town. Every time someone died in a mysterious way, he would see a bird follow him. He knew that if he worked in a pet shop all day, then it would break the random act of seeing a bird follow him. It was advice he took from his doctor in a local psych ward. He worried would it only cause more people to get killed, but luckily for 5 years now, he hadn't experienced any bird following him, and there was no mysterious death in his town. While Sam spent time in a local psych ward, he was trying to explain his situation. He eventually knew that all the doctors would think he was crazy if he kept believing when a bird followed him, there would be a mysterious death. So what he did was begin to tell the doctors he must have been going through some sort of breakdown, but he knows now that of course what he believed back then wasn't true, and he doesn't believe it now. Sam was on his laptop getting ready for the 5-year anniversary party of the pet shop. He was finishing the final touches, sending out emails to his customer list, reminding them that there will be free gifts and snacks all day tomorrow, celebrating 5 years of being in business. The next day the shop was full of customers enjoying the party. Sam was so happy that his plan had worked. He first realized it 5 years ago when he did what his first doctor said. It isn't real. The birds are not connected to any deaths. That is when the deaths stopped. He smiled over at his doctor, who treated him in the psych ward, while opening a bird cage. He whispered, "I believe the birds are responsible for deaths." Suddenly the birds followed Sam out of the shop, and just before the birds could reach the door, he made sure to run and close it, watching everyone in the store drop dead. Then he smiled and said to himself, "They should have believed me." Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Michael and his girlfriend Sarah were invited along with their friends Paul and Susan to a new restaurant that just opened. They won a competition on the radio and were very excited to be able to walk into a restaurant and order anything on the menu and not worry about the price. They were all students and didn't have much money to spare with all the expense of college. When they all arrived at the restaurant, they were admiring the outside of it. They heard a lot about it and knew it was very expensive, which was another reason them winning a free meal was a great win. When they sat down in the restaurant and looked at the menu, they appreciated more not having to pay as the meals were so expensive. They ordered their food and ate their meals and were really impressed. When it came to desserts, Michael was the only one to order Death by Chocolate. The rest ordered just plain ice cream. They relaxed after the meal drinking coffee. When they were finished and decided to go home, they had ordered a taxi, and while they were waiting, Michael saw a truck coming straight for him and screamed. He was blown off the footpath and thrown across the street as a chocolate ice cream truck ran him over.
But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, maybe you'll get sick of being the monster.
Michael knew he could open his eyes now because they would still be across the street, thinking he was ran over and killed. Little did they know, this accident had been planned for months by a friend of his who was a stunt driver. The reason he faked his own death was because he owed a lot of money to the wrong people, and he had planned on telling his friends he was alive when it was safe to do so. They worried if his body wasn't picked up yet by a fake ambulance, that was a part of the plan, then a real ambulance will arrive. But Michael didn't have to worry, because a sign pole that was hit outside the shop by the truck, saying fresh ice cream on sale here, fell and hit him on the head, and he was killed instantly.
But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, maybe you'll get sick of being the monster out of my head, under my bed. Think you're something out of my nightmares. See me right there. But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, then will you get bored of killing me?
Silhouettes of you are like a taunt.
Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Lee was looking forward to go to a new club tonight. It played his favourite music, drum and bass, and he was really looking forward to letting go after a hard week's work. He used to look at dancing to drum and bass as a workout, especially when he stopped taking drugs a year ago. When he got to the club, he was dancing with his friends and really enjoying the thump of the drum and bass in the club. There was a guy outside their group who was dared by his friends to spike Lee's drink. He dropped a tablet with 2022 written on it. His friends told him that it wasn't ecstasy, but a new type of hallucinogenic drug. He had a choice of magic mushrooms, or a tablet with a star on it, or 2022. But since it was the 1st of January 2022, he decided to spike his drink with that pill. After a while, Lee was coming up on the trip, and he felt great. His friends didn't even realize until after an hour it was obvious he was on a very, very bad trip. Suddenly the club became like a dark woods, and his friends were replaced with demons. This was all in Lee's head, of course, but there was no point in his friends saying that. When he was outside the club instead of it being night, it was like he was in the middle of all colours, floating around, spinning around. He couldn't make sense of it, but it was terrifying him. He was inconsolable. No matter how much his friends tried to talk him down from the trip, they couldn't. They expected the next day he would have a very bad come down, but the real nightmare came when they realised he didn't come out of the trip. A whole week later, it was then he was put into a psych ward for his own safety. When the guy who spiked Lee's drink heard about what happened, he couldn't believe that he was still tripping, and he couldn't believe that it was true. Whoever took that pill would be on a trip for all of 2022. And to make it worse, Lee was on a very, very bad trip. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Sarah was looking forward to watch a movie called The Last Night on Earth that she was lent by her sister. It seemed to be a great horror movie, which Sarah loved. Any horror movie was her type of movie. She loved the suspense and the thrill of what could happen next. Sarah's best friend Louise was calling over to watch the movie in about 30 minutes. Sarah decided to have a quick shower, so she left a note on the dining room table saying she was in the shower and won't be long. When Sarah was in the shower, she was humming to her favourite Guns N' Roses song, Paradise City. She had a habit of singing or humming in the shower. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the shower door. Sarah shouted, "Hi Louise, thanks for letting me know you're there. I'll be down in 2 minutes." When Sarah was out of the shower, she heard a car pull up in her drive. She was shocked when she looked out the window, realizing Louise had just pulled into her driveway. It hit her suddenly. If Louise was just after pulling into her driveway, then who had just knocked at the shower door? A cold shiver ran up her spine, and suddenly a figure dressed in black stood in front of her and said, "I hope you enjoyed your last night on Earth," and shot her dead. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Joseph moved in with his wife Lisa to a house in a secluded area, but that suited him fine. They came from the big bright lights of New York City and wanted to move away from the hectic city lifestyle. At first, Joseph and his wife hated the quietness and stillness of the area. After a few weeks, Joseph found himself going crazy when he was trying to go to sleep at night with the sound of the waterfall nearby. It haunted him, and when he eventually did fall asleep, he dreamt of stormy weather or the waterfall while he was drowning in it. His wife seemed to just sleep through the night, and it never bothered her, no matter how loud or annoying it got. He wished he had earplugs, but couldn't believe they would do any good, as the sound was so loud. It was driving him crazy. The next day when he got up, he just sat down, nearly falling asleep in front of the TV, because he couldn't get no sleep at night. One night it was different. It was almost like the waterfall was calling his name to come to it. The sound felt much, much different. It was like music to his ears. It was like the complete opposite of what it was like before. He was smiling at how appetizing the sound seemed to be. He got up from bed and got dressed and walked towards the waterfall. The noise of it was like beautiful, relaxing, soothing music to his ears. Then suddenly he saw the most beautiful lady. He remembered then. How could he forget? She was just standing next to the waterfall, waiting for him to embrace her. And that is just what he was going to do. Before he saw her skin colour change, and then he had realised the horror and what he kept locked away in a box in his mind and never wanted to open again. His wife had drowned in the waterfall a week ago, and he did everything he could to help her, but he just couldn't save her. He then realised who was the woman up in the house with him. Then he realised, of course, there was no woman up in the house with him. It was just his mind and the waterfall playing tricks with him. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content.
The boys in homeroom were talking about it. They were like the Hardy Boys, but there were 3 of them. They were always talking about some adventure they just had. They had even invited me a few times, but I was always too chicken. One time, they jumped the fence at the quarry. Another time, they went to the old abandoned mall near the sealed-off freeway that no one used anymore. This time, they were talking about a cave. It wasn't far from my house, at least that's what Miles said. It was in the woods behind my backyard, about a half-mile down. But it wasn't the cave they were talking about. Well, it was and it wasn't. See, Miles said he had heard something there, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. He said a voice was calling him to go inside. The others thought maybe they heard something, but they couldn't be sure. Miles wanted to go in, but the others said no, and as much as they wanted to, they just hadn't come prepared. Mickey said that it looks like you'd easily get lost because it was so dark. But tonight they'd bring flashlights and one of the big, long dock line ropes Chris's dad had down at the boatyard. It was sturdy, and if they tied it to something outside the cave, it'd keep them from getting lost in there. They invited me. When I said yes, they all froze. "You're going in first, then," Mickey said. That dumb, freckled smile and greaser hair always made me want to punch him. We all met up that night by my house around midnight. I followed them as they walked single file straight through the woods. It was easy enough to find the cave, half-mile down, just like Miles said. It looked like a big open mouth, black inside and totally hollow. "There's someone in there," Miles told me. I stared at it, with the others expecting me to go in first. He said he wasn't trying to scare me, but he knew it was true. There was something in there. He had heard it himself. I nearly peed my pants just looking at it. I told them I couldn't do it. They laughed. Then Mickey tied the rope to a tree outside and told me to wait for them. He said if they hadn't come back in an hour, I should tell someone. So I sat there and guarded the rope. At first it went taut because they used it to help them go down the initial slope just past the mouth of the cave. Just after a minute or so, the rope went slack, and they called to me saying that they were going a bit deeper. I said okay, and I sat there in the woods. That was the scariest night of my life. Normally, the woods would be the scariest part. I didn't even like looking at them from my bedroom window at night. Something about them always felt sinister, even during the day, to be honest. They never felt like nature usually does, but this time, it wasn't the towering trees or the whispering of the wind slithering through the leaves that terrified me. This time, it was the cave. From where I sat, it was just a wide opening with darkness so thick it could even be a curtain. Someone could have been standing there staring at me, and I would have never known it. The sun woke me up. It was dawn. It had been 5 hours since they went into the cave. I moved to the entryway and screamed, but there was no answer. I told my mom everything and she called the police. The policemen could hardly fit in the tunnels past the slope. They tried everything they could, but nothing worked. 2 weeks later, the search was called off. I had nightmares pretty much every night for a year after that. On days I couldn't sleep, I would sit up, looking at the woods behind my house, waiting for them to come walking out. They never did, of course. I never heard a single thing about them. Some people even tried going into the caves to look for anything they could find, but they all said it was just too tight to get anywhere after the slope near the opening. My senior year, people were finally starting to forget. It was almost like it was an urban legend, like it hadn't really happened. I was okay with that. I wanted to forget. One night, I woke up to a knocking at my front door. It was still the middle of the night. I was so groggy, I wasn't sure I was even really awake or not. I followed the sound of the knocking all the way downstairs and opened the door. But there was no one there. Then I heard the knocking again and realized it had been coming from behind me, from the basement door. Now I was sure I was awake. And I was scared. Every few seconds, it would come again. Knock, knock, knock. I was scared to open it, but I was frozen there, too afraid to run. So I opened the door. Miles was walking down the stairs already. The light in the basement was off, so he was just barely visible. He turned back and looked at me. "You have to come to the cave," he said. "We're still down there." He turned to go back down. Just before he did, his eyes glistened yellow in the half-light. He walked into the dark and vanished. I tried to convince myself that it had been a dream, but something inside wouldn't let me believe it. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if it was true? What if they were still down there? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mouth of the cave, just like that night. I felt like all it wanted was for me to go inside. I kept thinking about the tunnels. What if there was one right beneath me as I saw in class? What if all 3 boys were only a few feet away from me, right beneath the surface? It would have been the easiest thing, just staying put, keeping to the surface. The risk was all below. But just knowing it was there, knowing I would never have an answer to what happened to those guys unless I went in, I found myself going in there one day, when it was still light out, with nothing but a flashlight in hand. I figured I'd just cross the threshold, look around for a second, and come back up. Maybe the pulling, the incessant thinking about it, would finally stop if I just went inside, just for a second. When I got there, it wasn't so scary, so I walked inside. The cave was wide, wider than I would have thought. It sloped down so that just after you had gone in, you were already too deep to see the opening behind you unless you looked up, which I did. The cave stretched on beneath me. It was steep, but not so much that it caused much concern. I figured if I was really desperate, I could climb back up pretty easily. So I slid down, following the beam of my light, down and down the wide open cave. Finally, I came to the edge of the slope. There was a drop, only about 7 feet down. I aimed my light. It seemed like a flat platform and a way to keep going straight. I could only see a foot or two into the corridor. The walls were full of rocks that stuck out. I could climb up if I wanted, so I sat on the ledge and pushed myself off, landing on the platform. "Hello?" I called at the edge of the corridor. My voice carried, bouncing off the walls and fading into the dark. The feeling that had brought me here didn't dissipate as I moved deeper into the cave. It was just the opposite. The feeling got more and more intense, like I was always right on the edge of finding out the mysteries of the cave. So I went into the corridor. It wasn't super wide, but not too narrow either. I had to turn to walk sideways and fit comfortably, but that was okay. Behind me, the light from outside was starting to fade. In front, there was only the yellow beam of my flashlight bounding against the rock, which got sharper and sharper as I walked on. By the time I reached the end of the corridor, they were sharp as knives. There was another slight slope down. Beyond that, I wasn't sure. My light couldn't reach. I slid down, but the slope was so smooth I almost slipped and fell. At the bottom, I turned my light back and saw the slope was just as big as the first one. Only it was steeper, and there was nothing to hold on to. I tried climbing back up, but even as I did, I knew there was no turning back. And as much as I wanted to leave, I still felt like it wasn't done. Just a little further, I thought. I was almost there. The tunnel ahead wasn't wide like the first. In fact, it was exactly as wide as I was. I pushed in, both my arms grazing the sides. Each step was tighter than the last, and worse yet, it was always going down. I realized that ever since I had entered the cave, I had been steadily moving deeper underground, always going down. I must have gone at least a quarter of a mile below the surface by now. There was no turning back. I just had to hope I would find something that the other boys didn't. The beam of my flashlight grew dim, but there wasn't much to see anyway because it got so thin ahead. The ceiling of the cave wall dipped down and my only option became simply to go with it, until it got so thin that I was on my stomach. There wasn't enough room to pull myself forward by my arms, so I had to belly crawl 1 inch at a time. My right arm was fully extended out in front of me, the flashlight shaking as I moved. And still the ground sloped down, always deeper. Every moment that passed, I was farther from the surface. I thought the cave would have some logic to its passages, but I was wrong. There was no rhyme or reason for why the tunnels would turn right, or the ground would suddenly give way. And yet, no matter how narrow or awkward, there was always enough room for me to pass through. Like it had been made for human bodies to inhabit it. Made by something beyond comprehension. And then, just as my light was beginning to truly die out, the narrow passageway I had to push and struggle through, ripping my clothes and tearing my skin, finally opened up. I was elated. My lungs could fill again without the pain of jagged rocks scraping my ribs. But the feeling didn't last. There was nothing ahead. No passage. But there was something below. Water. Black. Nearly invisible. I stepped in it, thinking it was a puddle. My foot sank down to my shins before I caught myself on the edge. First, I tried to go back the way I came, but the protruding rocks cut into my stomach. They all faced toward me so that when I was moving toward them, they only scraped my skin, but now, if I moved the other way, they would rip into me. There was no going back. I could stand here in the little pocket and die, or I could drop into that black hole in the ground and risk not only being stuck, but drowning at the same time. The water bubbled, and I wondered if there was something beneath the surface. Something that had called me here. Called Miles here all that time ago. But then another thought struck me. This one so horrible I wished I could have taken it back as soon as I had it. The mouth of the cave. The long, twisting tunnels. The warmth of it against my skin. It all felt so alive. What if it was? What if Miles hadn't been called by something in the cave, but by the cave itself? What if the water moves because it was still digesting their bones? My light finally went out, and I was left with nothing but a darkness so absolute, it too felt alive. Like there was someone standing so close to me. I couldn't see anything at all. Yellow eyes stared up from the black pool beneath me. They quickly sank into the depths. I stood there, frozen and trembling, my mind reeling. Had I really seen them? I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe an hour, maybe 5. My joints were locking up, and the silence around me began to sound like voices. I would move, and my feet would scrape the ground, and I would realize just how quiet it had really been. The dread of my situation began to set in, and I made my decision. I would dive into the black pool. There was no other way. I closed my eyes, which had already filled with tears, and I took a deep breath. I jumped inside. As soon as I did, I knew there was no coming back up the same way. The tunnel was about 5 feet deep. Below, the space opened up into a vast black ocean. I hoped to reach the bottom so I could trudge along the floor to find the wall, but I only kept sinking. Beneath me, there was only emptiness. There was no floor. I could see nothing, of course, but to me it felt infinite, like I was slowly falling down an endless void. The air in my lungs pushed against my ribs, desperate to be let out. Then something swam past me. I couldn't tell what it was. A giant ancient creature, a skeletal boy who now lived in the labyrinth. Or maybe it wasn't something separate and apart from the cave. Maybe it was a part of it. like a tendril or a pulsing vein. My lungs burned. I opened my mouth. The water rushed in. It flooded every part of me. I woke up choking. All at once, it felt so ridiculous. Of course it had been a dream. It had to be. Once I caught my breath again, I lay down, trying to calm myself. I watched the ceiling, and as I drifted off again, I could have sworn the pattern on the drywall began to swirl. It's been some time since the dream, though how long I can't really be sure. I've moved on from all of that. Even the town is only a memory to me now. I work in the city. I have lunch in the courtyard of one of those new big glass buildings. Every night when I go to sleep, I stare at my ceiling, and just before I fall asleep, sometimes it feels like the world isn't right. It's hard to explain what I mean, but sometimes as I'm going about my day, eating my lunch, sitting on the bus, watching the people on the other side of the window go about theirs, something feels off. The people around me are always pleasant and fine, but there's something not right about them. And sometimes when I'm alone, I wonder if I'm still there. Still in that cave. Just sinking into nothingness. I wonder if all this time I've been there. I've been sinking. What if I never truly woke up? What if right now I'm in the belly of some great beast that placates my mind while slowly but surely it devours me?
Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content, then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content.